Jared Goff and the Detroit Lions offense just put an absolute shellacking on the Jacksonville Jaguars this past week, 52-6. Tough score line if you're a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, but it's great if you're a Lions fan. Jared Goff in this game, 24 for 29. To quote John Gruden, couldn't do that in pregame warm-up. 400 yards, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions after a tough week for him last week against the Houston Texans where he threw 5 interceptions. So a little bit of a roller coaster ride here for Jared Goff over the last couple of weeks. Seth, this is the best offense in the NFL. And a lot of times when we talk about the best offense in the NFL, we're often talking about their quarterback like he's an MVP caliber candidate. Do we feel that way about Jared Goff? Or maybe just a better way to phrase this conversation, because we don't have to get as hot and button with the words MVP. How valuable is Jared Goff? When you watch the Lions offense, how valuable do you think Jared Goff's presence is individually for what the rest of the offense is doing? What do you think about him?
I think my takeaway with Goff and his career is we've seen this. There's stats that there's been studies about how much more leeway a first round pick, and in this case, a first overall pick, gets. And what's happened is because we go back to the beginning. He plays under Jeff Fisher year 1 in St. Louis. They stink. He stinks. All of a sudden, he doesn't stink anymore when they move to LA and Sean McVay becomes the head coach and play caller. Because of his draft status, he's been allowed to get a lot of reps. And he's become so much better than he ever was. The issue with me is he's never played in again, besides that first year, he's really never played without star talent and star coaching around him. I mean, it's hard to, and it's going to be that way seemingly for the foreseeable future. We're just going to always have a hard time separating Jared Goff from his supporting cast, like we do with every quarterback, but him always feels like it's really stark. And there's a reason he got traded, right? Now, again, he keeps getting playing time. He keeps getting reps and playing time. And he was bad the first year in Detroit, and they had a bad team, and he couldn't elevate that team. And now you're seeing with the best offensive line in the league, with the best running back tandem in the league, with not the best receiving core in the league, but obviously a lot of high-end talent there. Where does he rank in terms of how valuable that on that Lions offense? I have a hard time putting him number 1. And Patrick Mahomes is number 1. Justin Herbert's number 1. Lamar Jackson's number 1. Matthew Stafford's number 1. Go down the list. Josh Allen's number 1. That's where I have the hard time with Jared Goff, because when things are not on script, we have problems. When there's pressure, which he doesn't get a lot because that offensive line is dominant, where we have problems. Run game, screen game, play action game is so elite on that team that they don't have to do a lot of true straight dropbacks. And he's not been great in those scenarios. He's not great under pressure. He's not great in those scenarios. And that's always going to be the thing. And it goes back to what I was saying. Can you win 3 or 4 games in a row against top teams in the playoffs year in, year out with Jared Goff? I don't think so. I don't even think I know people are going to get mad. I just don't think I'm seeing anything crazy here. He doesn't have the elite escapability. He doesn't have the elite arm strength. I do like his arm, but it's not an elite arm. Mm-hmm. And so I just look at it saying there's a lot of quarterbacks who would look really, really good in this offense with the supporting cast they have. It is a dominant team. And we also with Goff and how good that they've been playing, we tend to forget about the dark spots on the season, which is early in the season he was not playing very well. And then even last week against Texans, where he throws a bunch of picks, we just kind of brush that over because they win, and they had no business winning that game. So not that he didn't play well in spurts in that game, but it's man, There's a lot of open guys. There's not a lot of pressure. He's a good quarterback. He's just not a great quarterback.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to say it. Like he's very clearly. I don't want this to be like overly negative on Jared Goff. Like I agree with you. I think he is a good quarterback, and I think Ben Johnson coming back after 2 offseason cycles where he could have got a head coach job elsewhere, I think does speak to Jared Goff, because if he thought that Jared Goff was a bum, he wouldn't have come back to Detroit. Like even for as much as there's a lot of really great pieces there and they're building they've got a great offensive line and he has a lot of creativity and they're going the right direction. If he thought Jared Goff was truly like going to turn back into a pumpkin, like he was a bum, he wouldn't have come back to Detroit. So I want to make that very clear. Like Jared Goff is obviously a good quarterback, and his mastery and chemistry with Ben Johnson of that offense is, I think, really, really important. Now, there are some things that obviously lend itself to what you are talking about, where there's a reason why we keep him from the top tier or even second tier of quarterbacks in the NFL. So far this season, I mean, you listed some of them, but so far this season, he's 49.8 passing grade under pressure, which is sort of kind of how you can individualize a quarterback's performance, when things aren't going well. That's 26th in the NFL. He is 6th in the league. He has the 6th most turnover-worthy plays when he is pressured. He's 4th in turnover-worthy play versus single coverage. So not even when pressured, but when he has to attack single coverage specifically, he is 4th in turnover-worthy plays. When you look at his wins above average this season metric that we have over at PFF, he is 19th in the NFL, so he's just below half the quarterbacks in the league. I think Jared Goff is good, and I think he's good enough to win a Super Bowl because of how good this Lions offense is around him, how good this Lions defense is, how good the coaching staff is, how good the offensive line is. And I don't think that they would win in spite of Jared Goff. I think they would win a Super Bowl with Jared Goff, but I also don't think that they're winning a Super Bowl because also feels like the wrong word. He's not the biggest piece of that pie, in my opinion, even with him playing the quarterback position. But again, I want to make it very clear. I don't think they're winning in spite of him. I don't think that Ben Johnson would have come back to this team if he was bad, if he believed that Jared Goff was bad. He's a good quarterback. But I think we have a difficult time as a football society letting just good or above average quarterbacks be just good or above average. We either want to talk about them as tier 1 or tier 2 quarterbacks, great quarterbacks in the NFL, or we want to talk about them as completely replaceable. And Jared Goff is exactly in the middle with a really stacked football team. And I think that conversation is tough for people to just be okay with. But that's sort of how I feel about Jared Goff as well.
We can't just be okay with things, right? Like we have to get to the extreme in either direction. I think another thing, I don't even want to talk about Goff. I just want to talk about how good this offense is.
Go ahead.
It is, again, built by an offensive line that when we talk about offensive lines, a lot of times this is the PFF way of talking about offensive lines is often, hey, can we just not have a bunch of bad pieces? Like, yeah, we want a great left tackle, but if, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle are shitty players, and it's useless to have that great left tackle. So we just want to have at least everyone being above average. Like we're okay with that even if we don't have the lead. That's kind of the PFF way of talking about offensive line. What the Detroit Lions have is not only above average all across the board. I mean, they're almost, good to elite at all the positions, really. So you can run the ball as good as anyone's done in a long time. Again, you have 2 really good running backs as well with Montgomery and Gibbs. And what it does is it forces teams to allocate so many damn resources to stopping the run. They're just there are teams where you're like, hey, yeah, they're a good running team, but we can stay in too high with the safeties deep and allow some runs and we'll be okay. And it's you just can't, they'll gash you for, it's not 8-yard gains, not 6-yard gains, like 75-yard touchdown runs when you don't fit it properly, when you don't have enough people in the box. They'll do that when it's one high as well. But what happens is, and this is why Jared Goff's life is a lot easier, is, okay, well, you're going to allocate not only a safety down in the box to make it like an 8-man box or a +1 box. What you're going to do is you're going to play with 5 defensive linemen. You're going to play in that odd front, with like 3 defensive linemen, 2 outside linebackers on the line. So 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. And now we're even if we're not play actioning, which they're great at, even if we're just going to take the drop back against 5 rushing defensive linemen, we have less guys in coverage. And it's not a blitz because they're not coming from different angles and disguising stuff. They're just rushing with the 5 guys who are down, and you knew where they were before the ball was snapped. That's really easy for the O-line, and an O-line, again, that is great at winning one-on-one blocks. So it all leads to Jared Goff having an easier time throwing the football. You're getting quote-unquote blitz because 5 guys are rushing you, but no one's winning a one-on-one. And now you have all this time to throw to a lot of voided space in the zone, and you have good receiver talent. So it all like leads into the same thing. And I do think it starts with the run game, whereas it doesn't start with the run game for the Bills, the Chargers. In fact, the Chargers, who are obviously having this great year, the run game goes backwards. like they hand the ball off in 1st and 10, the ball's going backwards. So that is why it's tough because it's all the secondary effects that run game hands a quarterback. And it's always been like that with Jared Goff. So that's kind of where I am with Goff and the Lions offense. It is a dominant offense. They do the thing that you should do to a Jaguars team that has clearly quit, which is score 50 fucking points on them. Like, holy shit, that's crazy. like you're not supposed to do that to an NFL team. And they're doing that. Like they're so good when they can stay ahead of the sticks, when they can get the ground game working, which they pretty much do all the time. Like, and like I said, they can get into a situation where I agree. Like, I think this team can win a Super Bowl. I kind of hope it does win a Super Bowl. I think that would be a great story. I love it. They get the fact that all these great quarterbacks that we talk about play in the other conference. That's the main thing. Like they're not gonna see Herbert, Lamar, or Allen or Mahomes until the Super Bowl, and then it's a 1-game situation. And like I said, there's some matchups angles that go in their favor. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's it. Like I love this offense. I think Jared Goff has gotten better and better throughout his career. We don't have to talk about him as an MVP candidate. We don't even have to talk about him as the MVP candidate on his own team. But that doesn't mean this Lions offense isn't going to go and mash people's faces for the rest of the season, and I hope they do.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.